What's up everyone, it's Nick McCullum here, and in this video we're going to be working through the practice problems for classes from my course on Python Fundamentals. Now before we get started, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can get all of my future videos showing you how to become a better Python developer. With that out of the way, let's dig into these practice problems. Problem 1 says, create a Python class called basic class that just contains a static variable called the variable. Assign the variable a value of 1. Okay, so as we saw in the lesson, we create a class using the keyword class, and then we write the name of the class. So in this case, it's basic class, and here we write the variable is equal to 1. Awesome. So that's problem 1, easy peasy. Problem 2 says, given the following example class, create an instance of the class and reference each of its attributes using the dot operator. So you can see it has 3 attributes, age, name, and location. The solution goes here. So we'll say example instance is equal to example class. And since this actually doesn't take any arguments, then we can just reference them after that. And we do that through print statements. So in the first print statement, we will write example instance. And what's the first attribute we want to reference? Age. And then we can just copy and paste this and change the attribute to the other two. So we want age, name, and location. Awesome. So we run this and we get an error. Why is this? Name example class is not defined. That's because I didn't run this code cell first. So if we run them both, what do we get? 24, John Doe, and Toronto, Ontario. So 24, John Doe, Toronto, Ontario, it matches the attributes of the class itself. Awesome. Let's move on to problem 3. Problem 3 says, create a Python class called birthday boy that takes in 2 variables, a string called name and an integer called age. And it says, do not forget your init function. The init function is what you actually use when you create instances of that class. Next, it says, within birthday boy, create a method called birthday that increases the value of age by 1. Once this class has been created, create an instance of the class, then call the birthday method on that class to increase its age. Check that the age has been appropriately increased by the birthday method by referencing it using the dot operator. For example, instance.age. Okay, so let's get started. We'll first start by creating the class. So class birthday boy, and then on this line we'll write the init function. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then it takes 3 arguments: self, name, and age. So within the init function, it's important to always remember that it has to have a self argument. And even though there's 3 arguments here, it really only takes in 2 because the self is mandatory. Correspondingly, even if you had a init function that didn't take in any arguments, you would still have to have the self argument like that. So that's our init function. Within the init function, we're going to say self dot name is equal to name, and self dot age is equal to age. Okay, so there's our init function. Next up, we're going to have to create the birthday function that was mentioned, and the purpose of this birthday method is to increase the value of the age attribute by 1. So we'll write def birthday is takes in the argument self, and then within that method we're going to say self.age is incremented by 1. Awesome, so that's the class, and we'll run that first to make sure that it's working properly. Perfect, no errors, so we can continue on. We're going to create a variable called me, and me is going to be an instance of the birthday boy class with attributes name is Nick and age is 24 because my name's Nick and I'm 24 years old. So name is equal to birthday boy, and then we'll pass in the arguments Nick and 24. Great, so let's run that. And we can actually test to make sure that the attributes were assigned properly by saying me.name and me.age. Let's see what happens when we run this. We should get Nick and 24. Awesome, so we can comment that out and move on. Okay, so the last part of this question, it says increase the value of the age attribute using the birthday method and then print out that attribute to make sure that it's working properly. So what we'll do is we'll take out this, we will push that down a couple lines and uncomment it, and then in the middle here we will say me.birthday. And all this method here does is it increases the value of the age attribute by 1. So to make sure it's working properly, we will print age before the birthday method and we'll print age after the birthday method. So what the output here should be is just 24 and 25. Let's run this to see what happens. Awesome. So that's problem 3, and we can now move on to problem 4. Problem 4 is a fairly long problem, but it uses the salesperson class, which in my opinion is one of the best examples of how classes can be used in real-world Python applications. So let's work through this, and yeah, just make sure that you understand all these concepts before you move on from this course, because this salesperson is actually an example that I learned in college when I was first learning computer programming. So let's get started. Problem 4 says create a Python class called salesperson that has the following characteristics. It has dynamic variables called first name and last name that provide the salesperson's first and last names. Don't forget about your init function. It has a static variable whose value starts at 0 called sales that tracks the salesperson's sales over time. It has a method called makeSale that takes in an integer and adds that integer to sales. And it has a method called salesReport that prints a string saying my total sales are sales. Once this is done, create a salesperson instance with first name Nick and last name McCullum. Have the salesperson make a sale worth $500 and then run the salesReport method. The salesperson example is an excellent use case for the class structure in Python. You can have multiple instances within the same characteristics and track them separately. Okay, so let's get started. We'll first start by making the class salesperson, and we'll start by writing the init function. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and this will take 3 arguments: self, first name, and last name. All right, and then when here we have to actually define the attributes as self dot first name is equal to first name, and self dot last name is equal to last name. Okay, so that's the init function. And then it says we have to create a static variable whose value starts at 0 called sales. So for that, we just write sales equals 0. Next up, it says a method called makeSale that takes in an integer and adds that integer to sales. So this is going to be a method or a function. So we write def makeSale, and this takes in 2 things, self and sale. And actually, let's call that sale value. And then we're going to say sales is equal to sales plus sale value. And one thing I forgot here is this should actually be self dot. And this self dot here just indicates that that sales attribute is associated with an instance of the class and not the class itself. So it'll be unique to every time you create that class. So the next thing we have to do is create the salesReport method. And this one's fairly simple because it's just a print statement. So def salesReport self. And notice that even though this is just a print method, you still have to pass in the self argument because you always need that in class methods. So we write print, and then this is going to have an interpolated value, so we will use an f string. My total sales are self.sales. And we'll put an exclamation mark just for some emphasis. Let's run this code and see what happens. Awesome, no errors so far. In the next code cell, we're going to actually try to create the salesperson class with the characteristics specified in the question. So we're going to call this class me, and it's going to be an instance of the salesperson class. And its arguments are going to be Nick and McCullum. So that's the first name and last name that we specified here. So there's that. We're going to say me.makeSale. I just sold something for $600. And then we're going to tell myself to make a sales report so that we can see what your total sales are so far. And salesperson object has no attribute make sales. Why is that? Oh, because this is an important error in Python where I just made a small typo. The method itself is called makeSale, but I specified make sales with an S on the end. So if we take that out, this should run properly. And we get a different error this time. Name sales is not defined. Why is that? Oh, okay. So on this line of the class instantiation, this should actually have a self dot here. And one way that we could have actually gotten away from this is instead of doing self.sales plus sale value, we can just use the plus equals operator like that, or the increment operator, and have avoided that completely. So let's run that code block and run this code block again. And there we go. It's finally working properly. So that was some practical examples of debugging in Python, and concludes our examples of the practice problems for classes from my Python Fundamentals course. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can get all of my future videos that show you how to become a better software developer. Thanks again.